Hey gang, Troy Harrison here from Real World Hot Rods. And I was thinking, so when Steve Phelps left NASCAR a few weeks ago, which by the way, thank God for that. That Steve Phelps did more damage to NASCAR than anybody can think of. But here's the thing. In my opinion, he resigned way too late. Steve Phelps should have resigned 5 minutes after his text messages calling Richard Childress a stupid redneck came out. Now, most people are sitting there and they're associating Richard Childress with Dale Earnhardt. And God, that's understandable, man. The yellow and blue number 3, the black number 3, RCR and Dale, man, that they were like that. But I'm going to tell you something. Here's the thing about Richard Childress. I've been a fan of Richard Childress and the number 3 before I even knew that there was a Dale Earnhardt, and I'll tell you why. And a lot of people don't even know that Richard Childress was a driver before he was a car owner. Richard Childress drove NASCAR Grand National Cup and even the old Grand American Series all through the 70s. Was also drove modifieds, I believe, and Richard Childress was one hell of a race car driver. Richard Childress was one of those guys who spent most of his career in an era where there was only about a half a dozen really good cars. And if you weren't in one of them, you probably weren't going to win the race. But let me tell you a little something about Richard Childress, the man. So I'm 8 years old. My family's at Daytona International Speedway for Speed Weeks. We did that every year from 76 to 80. God, it was great. And I'm this little kid, and Dad had managed to get passes that actually got us into basically every place except the NASCAR Winston Cup garage. We could even walk out on pit road during practice, believe it or not. I think about that, and I think about how insane that is, considering it in today's world. So we're down there, and we're out on pit road, and Dad decides that he wants me to, and we're on the inside of the pit wall. Let's be clear about it. We're not actually out on pit road. We're on the pit side. And Dad's got his camera, and he decides that he wants me to stand next to the pit wall, facing away from the racetrack with the tri-oval in the background, the big Daytona USA. Thought that'd be a cool picture. And Dad lines up his camera, and all of a sudden I hear this rumbling behind me. And I turn around, and there's this blue and white number 3 with Kansas Jack painted on the rear fender. And of course, we're from Kansas, so we're fans of his anyway. And it's Richard Childress. And Richard pulls up so that Dad can get a picture of me with him right behind me. Dad did that. And then Richard waves Dad over and sits there. And Richard doesn't know Dad. Of course, Dad raced for years, but they never raced together. And Richard has a conversation with the two of us for about 3 or 4 minutes. And then he says, okay, I guess I better go back to work now. And sticks car in gear, goes out and practices. And that's Richard Childress, guys. And I don't care how many millions of dollars he's got. I don't care how many championships he's won. I don't care that he's tried to make race drivers out of his grandsons. Honestly, not the biggest fan of Austin and Ty, but I get it. Family is family. But that is who Richard Childress is. They're on a day, and by the way, Richard Childress back in the day always had immaculate equipment. Some of the most beautiful, best prepared cars there were. They just didn't have quite the engines that the big boys have. And but that's who Richard Childress was. On a day when he is trying to find speed for the Daytona 500, he stops and takes a few minutes out to talk with a couple of fans and a little kid, and that's just so cool. By the way. About a minute after that, Dad stands back to take the picture of me again. Now behind me comes the Matador, Bobby Allison. This is in 77. That's the year Bobby drove the Matador under his own ownership. Now, Bobby didn't stop and talk, which the funny thing about that was Bobby and Dad did know each other because Dad had raced some Allison cars a few years before. He bought parts and stuff from Bobby and had talked to Bobby about setting up his Monte Carlo and Chevelle. But Bobby pulls up, sits there long enough for Dad to get the picture, goes out and practices. But that's who Richard Childress was. So when I saw I saw that Steve Phelps had referred to Richard Childress, a man who was one of the cornerstones of NASCAR, as a stupid redneck, I had a very visceral reaction to that. And I thought, this guy, this Steve Phelps, hates everybody who made NASCAR what it was. The legacy fans, the legacy owners, the legacy drivers, this guy's scum. And I couldn't be more happy that he's gone. I'll have some more thoughts about where NASCAR should go and how it should get there in future I was thinkings. But right now, that's what I was thinking. So, guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. It really does help a lot. Watch along on my hot rod builds. And drop me a comment. Tell me how much you disagree with this opinion. If you do, wouldn't be the first time. Thanks a bunch, guys. Have a great day. This is Troy Harris from Real World Hot Rods. I'll see you next time.